I want you to turn down at least one new customer or one deal this week. Let me tell you why. Okay, so now we know about the whole IHOB thing. They did it. It looks like they're actually changing the name to IHOB, and it turns out that B stands for burgers. And I think they took probably the most ingenious PR campaign and screwed it up by going forward with it. I mean, maybe I'll be wrong, but everything is wrong with it. Remember we were talking about names, logos, slogos. We were talking about slogos. This wouldn't really apply to this, but I love that word. What IHOP versus IHOB, right? And here we are giving it more publicity.
So they switched briefly, and then they switched back to IHOP. The story.
See, I'm missing the story. The last I heard is they're really going forward with it. Did that change?
They went to IHOB as a temporary promotion that they were going to go big into the burger field, and then they switched the name back to IHOP after they got the promotional boost talking about their burgers.
Okay, so then that was ingenious, but that's not how I understood it. The last thing I saw, are you looking it up?
I'm looking it up right now.
Let's be accurate here.
Esquire, for some reason, is covering this, and they say that the International House of Burgers, as it had taken to calling itself lately, owned up to its own ruse this week and announced it will revert back to the IHOP that we all know and occasionally indulge in. And I also saw on, when I Googled this topic, somebody from an individual from Esquire wrote a story headlined, "I tried IHOP's new burger and it plunged me into a deep sadness."
Oh.
So I'm not sure highlighting your burgers if the burgers aren't good is going to really work for them.
So I thought I even saw a commercial with IHOP. They went that far to actually do a real commercial.
They changed their name and then changed back.
Okay. Well, then this could work out to be this would be right in line with what I was saying you should do. But I really thought they went forward. So, okay, count me as relieved today. Because I always loved that logo. I love that name. So anyway. So I started the show out by telling you, everybody who's listening, who's a business owner and a salesperson for that matter, is to turn down a new customer or a deal. Jim, why on earth would I suggest something like that?
I can't wait to hear, because that sounds crazy to me.
Can you even take a stab at it, maybe?
Well,
does that mean no?
I'll take some guesses. One theory would be that you don't want to be desperate. You don't want to jump at every potential deal, which is something I think I've done occasionally while running this network, is you get too excited about a deal and you commit to it, and then you realize later it wasn't that great a deal and you should have taken more time with it. Those are my completely blind guesses, because we don't talk about the stuff before the show starts. I'm running blind here.
You are in the ballpark.
Okay.
It's two parts. Number one, yes, it's a matter of being true to yourself as a person and as a business person, and not just going after every opportunity that comes around. And that's one thing that new business people in particular struggle with, is something comes their way, it's revenue for the company, and they think, I can't pass this up. So let's listen, everybody, right now. When in your head you hear the words, I can't pass this up, I want you to tap into your alter ego or whatever it is and say, well, really, why not? What would really happen if I did? Now, if the deal is absolutely a slam dunk, it's a fit, it's in your wheelhouse, it's perfect alignment of needs versus the services that you have available, then that's not the deal we're talking about. What I'm talking about is that one that makes you feel a little bit funny inside. You might feel like you're taking on a new customer, or you're doing a new deal for a little less money than you probably should. You're adding up the cost in your head. You're saying, it's going to be a little bit tight, but I need the revenue. the fun thing about this show for me is that I can finally talk about the mailing company, because this is going to apply a lot more to businesses than it will the retail side. Although I'll talk in a little bit about how it definitely affects the retail business as well. And I learned this lesson by accident. When I started out as a printing salesman, I think we might have talked about that on the show before. And I worked for a printer that had a lot of capabilities, so you could really do a lot of different things. And the customers usually had a very wide range of needs that they had. So you would pretty much take whatever you could as long as the margin was there. And in the printing world, there's this concept that you got to keep the presses full. And if you have a business with machinery and all that, I'm not saying to throw out those concepts. I'm not saying to not think about efficiencies and how that goes in. But that goes into determining whether it's a good deal or not, right? That's not a matter of deciding whether you should, take the deal or not on its face value. You have to calculate all those things in there. So I'm just to be careful, I'm not telling everybody to leave a piece of equipment sit down if it's going to sit, or send an employee home when something could be done. As long as in the end the company is making a healthy profit on what they're doing. And then when I started, so I got this idea, or I had this concept in my head all the time: just take everything, take everything, take everything, take everything. So when I started my own business, which was kind of a tiny micro version of the company I was working for, I wouldn't turn down anything. I would take anything I possibly could. And I remember I would just convince myself why I should take the deal and why I should get that. And we got so full that I had to turn somebody down. And I remember it being the most excruciatingly painful phone call I had ever had, when I said to the person, I really want to take this, but there's just no way I can do this for you. And the customer had prefaced the job with, it has to be done by this date, it has to be done for this amount of money. If you can do these things, the deal is yours. I said no, and something miraculous happened. The customer said, what if I give you more time? And I thought, oh.
So it was negotiating.
Maybe maybe I need to think about just saying yes all the time and having that dialogue. So we ended up taking the job. It was a great job. It was for a good customer in this particular case. And it was that first kernel of learning that lesson. Later on, something even more monumental happened. We were doing pretty well. And I didn't really need any business, although I was still very eager to take on new clients. I would do the same thing, convince myself that, this is good, and we'll figure out a way. And we always figured out a way. Had great people around us, so sometimes it got tight, and sometimes we had to work overtime and weekends and things like that. And we always made it work. But I always remembered there was a taxing of the people. There was a taxing of the system. There was always a consequence to taking on more, or, hear me loud and clear on this, different jobs. And in our world, every job was a little bit custom. So I had a customer that called and, let me back up. The other thing that would happen in our business is people would quote. So you even had this formula that said, I'm going to end up quoting 10 jobs to get one job, and I'm going to contact 100 customers to get those 10 quotes to get that one job. And I'm sorry.
My French bulldog farted, and my wife is dying, and we're going to take this opportunity, this natural break provided by my lovely dog.
Natural break of wind.
Natural break of wind.
Natural wind break. We're taking a natural wind break.
I will remind people this is the Throw The Boss Out podcast, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. It's almost all sports. This is our business venture on the network. Joe brings a lot to the table that I cannot offer people with all of my other shows. He's been good for my business. I think you should sponsor this program if you're trying to reach business people. You will reach a very dedicated, business-minded clientele if you advertise with us. And since we're starting off, we can probably be flexible, and we probably won't say no, but I'll let Joe make that decision. You can email me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. Also, if you like sports, check out all the other shows. We have Cheryl Reeve, Michael Russo, Roy Smalley, Tim Yoder, John Krasinski, John Millay on Preps. We have basically 10, 11 shows going right now. If you like sports, you'll find something you like at talknorth.com.
Thanks, Jim. And thanks, Boyd, for the comic relief.
Thanks for the transition, Boyd. Thanks for transitioning the show, Boyd.
I have an English bulldog at home named Merle, and he's just like that. So I'm used to that. Jim, I have to remind you.
Yes,
we have said no.
That's true. We have already said no a couple of times, and you know what? We're just trying to find the right fits, as you said.
It is important. So back to my story. In our business, there was a lot of quoting going on. And that's also another area where your business can be heavily taxed in terms of labor, time, is that people are just throwing out prices and doing calculations just to get a job. And you do so many quotes to so many jobs, and it's tough. And I noticed that there were customers that would quote, and maybe they would throw us a bone. There you go, Boyd. They would throw us a bone every once in a while just to keep us in the quoting. And this really, really happened. And I had talked to buyers who said, we give everybody a job every once in a while just so we can keep them in the quoting pool, because that's good business for us to get a lot of people to quote this. So the next time I got a quote from somebody that I knew was just throwing us a bone, I said, no, I'm not even going to give you a quote. Doesn't fit. I don't have the time. You obviously have a really great set of suppliers that are taking care of you, and honestly, I'm just hurting them by adding more quotes to. And there was dead silence on the end of the phone. This buyer had never heard anybody say no, because it was a big customer. And even the little bones they would throw us were really great. They were really great projects. But along with being large, they also were very demanding. When something went wrong, they were very unforgiving. They were not the ideal customer, which made it easier to say no. Got off the phone. Guy called back 15 minutes later and said, just give me a price. I'm going to give you the as long as it's anywhere in the ballpark, I'm going to give you the deal. And it turned out later that a lot of his other suppliers couldn't actually get it done. So we went forward, we did that deal, and had that customer for a long time. I had a very good conversation with him saying, I'm looking for partners, looking for somebody that we can rely on. Shortly after that, we found a few customers that we did the best work for. And we had developed some intellectual, what's the word I want to look for? We knew that their business almost as good as they knew their business. And I said to the person that was on the phone, out selling, go find more of those. And from that point on, I've always had this corporate value, I call it, of finding partners that fit and finding and going into niche markets. Now, that's not a earth-shattering idea, but it does. This whole story does tell you why it's so important to do that. When I'm in a niche, I offer a lot more value than what I'm charging for. Right? I'm charging for printing. I'm charging for some service. I'm charging for knowledge of postal stuff. Other people have that. That's not so crazy. But if I'm working with one niche that we have for the mailing company is we're one of the best marketing companies in the United States for hospital foundation mailings. That's a pretty narrow niche. But we know so much about how to do that. When someone comes to us and says, can you give me a quote? Or in that world, they say, I want you to do an RFQ, a request for quotation. We now turn down every request for quotation we ever get, even if it's in that market. And about 7 out of 10 times, we end up getting the deal after we turn down the request for quotation, because our standard answer to them is, thank you so much for allowing us to participate in this. We don't feel this is a good way to start a business relationship off. We have experience that shows that no matter how thorough this set of questions is, you'll never really know how good we can do. Once you get through this process, if you have not found somebody that's satisfactory, please, let's go through our way of deciding whether there's a fit. And I have gained at least 5 or 6 new customers by doing it that way.
Wow.
And it's counterintuitive. I call it the walking on the left side. This is one of those walking on the left side of the road moments. You remember the first time somebody's telling you, well, you ride your bike on the right side, but you walk on the left side. And you think, wow, why wouldn't I do the same either way? And so you might even be defiant, if you were like me, and say, no, I'm walking on the right side of the road because that's consistent. That's what I'm used to. First time you walk on the left side of the road, what happens? It's like the whole world opens for you. Go, this totally makes sense. This is way more comfortable. But you didn't want to do it at first because it wasn't natural. This is one of those moments in business where you need to, don't take every job or every new customer that comes your way. And I think the second part of the answer to why would I want someone to do this is I think there's some sort of energy that happens when your mindset changes, that the world reacts differently to you. We haven't talked too much about this sort of thing, but I really believe in that. Like, I really believe that I don't want to get too much into the power of positive thinking and all, the existential things, but I do know that in these instances, when you have that feeling like, wow, something different just happened and something just changed, that it has to be more than just a mental reaction to this. And this is one of those moments in my life that I wanted to share today and to say to people that you don't have to be everything to everybody. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I know, my limited dealings with this network, that we kind of have figured out who our primary sponsors, advertisers are. It's people from here who know our people, know our hosts, who value what they bring to the table, who value the social media reach as well as the listenership, and who can make a decision on their own. They don't have to call New York, and can just say, okay, let's just do it. I mean, the sales work for my company when we're dealing with somebody local who has their own authority, runs their own business, and already gets what we're doing, doesn't have to be persuaded into believing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing that comes into play for the variable between businesses is this concept of capacity. So when you're talking about a piece of equipment like we were before, sometimes you have a capacity issue, and in other cases you don't. In advertising, you have a capacity at a certain level, but it's pretty flexible.
It is. In
terms of what's available to sell. Another lesson I learned a long time ago from my 8th grade, it would have been social studies teacher. The cost of the opportunity, or the opportunity cost. And when you have capacity, this other part comes in, is that when you take that job that's not ideal, lo and behold, 2 days later, there's going to be the ideal job that's going to come in that's going to fill that spot better. It's going to be more profitable. And so you have to think about that. When you have, again, advertising is a little bit different. You can pretty much fit everybody in. But here's the sales pitch that I will give anybody that's interested in advertising on this show or any of the shows on this network. The beauty of particularly this show, because there are so few advertisers, is that saying it right?
Yeah.
So few advertisers, is that you stand out.
Right.
And so there's a value to being, to getting the most attention on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me take this opportunity to thank Brandon Morton, our producer. And again, if you would like to sponsor or advertise with this show, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com.
Thanks, Jim. You're so professional. This is what's so fun to be part of the show, is that you've just got this thing down.
I'm not used to being called professional. This is a little awkward for me.
It's like you've done it before or something like that.
Well, I tell you what, you do get reps doing what I'm doing right now. You get a lot of reps. I'm probably a lot better at this than I was a couple of years ago.
So how does this apply? I told you I would talk a little bit about how it might apply to a retail business. How do you think it would apply to a retail business?
Which part? The
not taking
no?
Yeah, the not taking every deal, the not taking every new customer.
Well, and this we'll play the game where I'll throw out what I think, and then you tell me where I was wrong.
I didn't say what I was wrong before, did I?
I mean, I was close to being right, which is about as well as I'm ever going to do. I do like the idea that it's got to be the right fit. It's got to fit. You've got to be able to handle the workload. It's got to be the right fit philosophically for your business. There are certainly potential sponsors out there I would turn down. Am I in the right ballpark with this one?
Yeah. Well, no. I was kind of talking very much about like a retail business.
Okay.
If we were going to apply this to a retail business, which there's generally not a capacity issue. Like,
right.
Why wouldn't you sell if you have this product? Most manufacturers will sell you as many as you need. Sometimes they're limited, but for the most part, why wouldn't you just sell one to anyone that walked through the door? And just try to get, if you could sell 10 today, great. But if you could sell 20, why wouldn't you sell 20? And it gets to be a lot tougher decision when you're in retail because there's not a lot of reasons to say no to somebody, unless of course they come in and say, "Hey, I'll give you $100 less than you have listed on that thing." Well, that's your opportunity to say, "Oh, no, we'll pass on. We'll pass on that." But how about difficult customers? Let me tee this up. Is the customer always right?
No way.
So I would have to say we're going to do a show on business cliches.
Good. That's right up my alley.
We're going to do a show on business cliches. And I want to take this moment to ask everybody to go on the Throw the Boss Out Twitter page, Facebook page, whatever, and just...
And what's better, Twitter or Facebook?
I think that they're equally... I don't care.
I think you're... just want to make sure we highlighted the right one.
I just want suggestions.
Okay.
Throw out any business cliche you've ever heard before, whether you think it's right, wrong, or indifferent. Just let's get as many business cliches as we can. I have a plethora of them that I could talk about. But I think the one worst business cliche in the world is the customer is always right. And it's not because I hate customers. I love customers.
Of course not. Yeah.
It is because it has been so misconstrued and honestly has been abused since the day the first person uttered it, who I don't know who gets credit for that, but it was a terrible thing to say. It undermines exactly what we're talking about. It undermines the idea that when two people do business, it's a partnership. And the person who holds the dollars definitely has the advantage in most cases. And they should be treated with the utmost respect, and they should be given every reason to give you their money for your service or your business. But if you run into customers who are demanding, who are rude, who take advantage of things, who are dishonest, that's one of my... We draw the line at that right away. If I tell everybody in every one of my organizations, if a customer ever is dishonest and it's very evident, then we need to find a way to part ways. And we do it as respectful as we can. But if somebody calls and lies about something, it's over. It's over. I don't care how much money they've spent. I don't care how much money they're going to spend. We definitely draw the line at that. And again, with rude, pushy things. Now, let me do a caveat. I'll move to a caveat there. We have another precursor rule, I think I would call it. And that is, if somebody comes in blazing mad and they've never dealt with us before, it's a whole different story. Do you know why that is?
No.
If they've never dealt with us before, they can't possibly be upset with us. They're upset with somebody else. And that is now an opportunity. So when someone comes in blazing mad, or they react very poorly to, our first interactions, I also tell everybody, just back up, diffuse the situation, let the person know that we're on their side and that we're going to help them, and then you help them. And we have won over some of our very best customers that way. The situation I'm talking about before is the person that every time there's an issue, it doesn't matter if there's an issue or not, there's an issue. The people, we've talked about cutting price. I just think that cutting price is a bad idea if there's not a reason for it. Now, hear me loud and clear, if there's not a reason for it. And in retail, in any kind of business, there's plenty of reasons for it. And that's all part of negotiating, is that you and the customer are exploring what's the real value of something. So it doesn't mean that we're going to set our price and by God, that's what we're going to charge, no matter what. But when someone comes in and says, I just want a deal because, I've heard this before, I don't buy unless I get a deal. Guess you're going to have to go somewhere else. And I'm okay with that, because the way I look at it is if somebody needs a deal, particularly right off the bat, then they've set the precedence to say, I'm always going to want a deal. Some business people have told me, well, I like to give people a deal on the first time and then we win them over as a customer. I am telling you right now, and I probably have said this in other podcasts, the person that wants the deal right off the bat is never going to come back later and say, well, I'll pay full price now.
Right. Well, hey, the newspaper industry went through that, and it
really,
it's amazing because, again, as you know, I don't consider myself an experienced or a gifted or an intelligent business person at all. That's why I like doing the show. I learn something every week. And I remember when we started going through some, the downturn in our industry, I'd go in the office and everybody was like, "Oh, we got to start putting our stuff on the internet for free. And then we can, once we get it out there for free, then we'll get a lot of clicks and we can sell advertising."
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm like, "Hold it!
You devalued.
You're telling me that you're going to give somebody a Mercedes for free and then hope that they then come to you next year and buy one at full price?" No, they're going to keep driving the free Mercedes. And if you ask money for that later, they're going to tell you, no. I mean, you gave it to me free. Why would I ever pay for this? It was the worst thing. It was one of the worst things that ever happened in our industry. We said, let us give you our product for free. Oh, yeah, and then 5 years down the road, we're going to realize we need to charge you for that. I mean, we've kind of started clawing back gradually, mainly because the younger generation's willing to pay for content, but it was a terrible decision.
And I had somebody talk to me once. They were starting a consulting business, and they wanted to do consulting for us, and they offered to do it for free. And I stopped them, and I said, "Don't ever do that ever again. Not for me, not for anybody." Because of that, exactly. I mean, if you basically set the value of that product immediately, and nobody's going to psychologically. So anyway, folks, I try this. I have a feeling that you're going to write to me at some point. You might be listening to this an hour after it's been published. You might be listening to this a few years after it's been published. But I have a feeling you're going to reach out to me at some point and say, that was some of the best advice I ever got. And thanks for listening to Throw the Boss Out with Joe Leach and Jim Souhan. As Jim has said, please download the episode.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yep.
Yes.
And what else we want? And again, we're looking for advertisers. And try us.
Yeah,
maybe we'll say